Very pleased to welcome Courtney this morning to the Senior Forum. And thanks, Courtney, for coming. I know how busy your days are. So Courtney is a local girl and has a degree in elementary education. But after she married Brent, and some of you met Brent a few weeks ago doing the real estate part. So this is the other part of the partnership. So after she and Brent married, then she switched her careers to real estate. Besides being a mom to what she says are 3 great kids, she enjoys cooking and reading and traveling and singing. And when their first son was born, she and Brent were thrust into the world of autism without nearly as many resources as there might be today or information about what to do. And so they forged their own path for the last 16 years. And she's agreed to come and share some of the things they've learned about what we can all do to support children with autism. So Courtney, thanks for coming.
Right. Thanks guys for inviting me to come and talk. So a little bit about our family. I know you met Brent the other day. We have 3 kids. Reese is our firstborn and he is now 16 years old. We have 2 daughters. Emmy is 13. She's just graduating 8th grade next month. And our youngest, Gabby, is about to turn 9 in a couple of weeks. So we definitely keep busy, especially in these crazy times of pandemic. When we first started out, Reese was the first kid for us, first grandkid for both sides. We weren't really around other kids that, were his age. So what we were seeing with Reese, we didn't know was not normal. Oftentimes he would just kind of be in this bubble where he didn't hear anyone. He wouldn't respond. He wouldn't react to anything, wouldn't engage with us, which we didn't know was, unusual. Until one chance encounter where I decided to let him go to a Bible camp at our church, but I decided to be his teacher so I could keep an eye on him. And the other 3-year-olds were doing crafts, they were attending to lessons, and Reese was running the perimeter of the room the whole time and not engaging at all. So we didn't quite know what was going on, but we knew that that was definitely not what other kids do. And there was an instance where I ran into someone at the grocery store, and I don't know this person. She just came up and asked me if he was autistic. And that would have been in 2007. At that time, there was very little information, and what information there was out there was quite faulty. So what I knew of autism at the time was they're not affectionate, but they're super, super intelligent. And Reese was very affectionate. He would give me hugs. He would tolerate me holding him. So I said, no, he's not autistic. There's no way. But there was something going on there. So we went to our pediatrician at the time. We said, no, there's something going on here. What can you tell us? What information can you give us? He said, I don't know. It could be a speech problem. I don't know. And so I said, well, who should I ask? Where do I go? And he said, I'll just find a speech therapist in the phone book. So it was really not helpful at all. But that seed had been planted by that lady in the grocery store with autism. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe I should see what there is out there. Can we get him tested? Where do I go for that? And he was about 3 to 4. So he was entering that age of preschool. And so I reached out to Missoula County Public Schools, and they have their resource is Jefferson Preschool. They're over on South Avenue. And they said, yep, we do testing for all of that stuff. So they got me set up with an appointment with the people who screened for that. Wow. And they gave him an educational diagnosis, which was not a psychological diagnosis. So they gave him an educational diagnosis of autism, and that kind of just got us started because there is this world of therapies and knowledge and clinics and stuff. Just it couldn't get there for a while. So now that we have this this information, we just kind of took off from there. He got enrolled at Jefferson Preschool. He got physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. They provided a parent support group, which I had not heard of before then. They even offered classes for parents, and my mom came and took it with me about how to engage with your children, how to get them out of their bubble a little bit. And from that point, we actually found the state had just started a new program called the Medicaid waiver, Autism waiver program. And that program is a lottery system. You go on this list, and they had certain random drawings a few times a year, and they would waive your income. It didn't matter how much you made. If your child had an autism diagnosis, you go on the list. And when they draw your name, or if they draw your name, because not everyone got drawn, you get 4 years of help, like financial help. They paid for everything. And Reese was in the very first drawing. It was just pure luck that he got that. So he would get, he had a Medicaid card, so he would get all the therapies for free. There was no copay. He got all the therapies at home. We had a budget for respite care so that I could take care of myself. We had a supply budget. Through the years, though, that dwindled smaller and smaller and smaller until he aged off of the waiver program, and the state actually started limiting how many spots were available. They were lowering the funding on it, which was unfortunate. But that really was a lifesaver for us. Through that, we learned how to get him to respond to his name. And from that point, even now, it's crazy to look back, but he can actually have short conversations. A lot of them are what I would call scripted. He has a lot of memory or memorized responses that he will use to engage with people, but they are situationally appropriate. So once he graduated from Jefferson School, we had moved into the Hellgate Elementary School District, and he started kindergarten there. And we went for a couple of years at Hellgate, but we were having, again, problems with the special ed program. I wasn't getting along with the coordinator, who didn't really have high expectations for him. They weren't really engaging him. They were allowing him to just check out and not engage with students. They didn't encourage the students to engage with him. So we ended up leaving the Hellgate, and we went to a private school, which was run by Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's over on Clements. And he did that for a few years with help of an aide that we had to provide with our insurance. And that worked pretty well for a few years because they all went at their own pace. And the kids there just loved Reese, and they wanted to be his friend, but they knew sometimes he needed space. So that worked perfectly for quite some time until he became a little too comfortable with the fact that the kids would leave him alone, and we wanted to challenge him with being social. So we ended up having to take him out of there, and we put him in target range in 4th grade. And he stayed there for the next 4 years. We were very impressed with the school there. They really fostered an environment of inclusion, which is super important for those on the spectrum because they're all different. They all have different abilities. They have different sensory needs. But the fact that the school, you know, it was everybody's a buddy. So even what we call neurotypical kids is the term. Even those kids were very encouraged to participate and get them to come into Reese's world. So we saw some really great strides in his social skills because of the fact that the kids wouldn't give up on him. They just kept trying to pull him out of the little shell that he's been in. And so it's just been really good for him. And now he's in high school. He's at Big Sky this year, and so far our experience has been just so great there as well. COVID being what it is, the kids don't usually interact with the special ed students, but that is what they have a program for. Once we're allowed to get all the kids together, they do pair up neurotypical kids with the special needs kids. And right now, Reese is working on doing some jobs at the school. He's learning life skills, cooking, taking care of himself, balancing a checkbook. They even have a thrift store that they used to run, I guess. They haven't yet. They do coffee cart sort of things where they sell coffee. So that's been a really good transition for him so far. We've had our hand in some troubles with Reese as well. Struggles that we've had in the past have been insurance, because we had come from Medicaid that was so easy to use. Both Brent and I are self-employed, so once Reese went off that waiver, we had to get our own insurance, and got kind of thrown into the world of insurance and how they can sometimes be tricky. They'll try to trick you into paying things that you shouldn't have to pay. We've had them deny claims for no reason at all. They've had us yank our coverage for no reason at all. I've had to involve the Secretary of State to get on them because they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. Like, I have free time. So, I mean, those are some of the issues that we've had with Reese, but there's been a lot of good things with Reese having autism. I would say that with his therapies, he has really come out of his shell, and we've really seen a personality come through within the past 5 to 10 years that we didn't know he had. He has a great sense of humor. He's a very funny guy and loves to tell jokes, but he only has a certain set of jokes. He's so smart, and he wants to engage with others. It's just he doesn't sometimes know how, or he doesn't want to because he doesn't know how to end the conversation. So he can kind of pull into himself. Gosh, what else was I going to say? Because of what we've had to do with Reese, we've tried our hardest to put out there what we know to the community. We've been involved with the community at large with autism awareness. We've funded or helped fund the MCT programs that they do for people with special needs. Once a year, they'll put on a play at MCT, and they'll do one called a sensory friendly performance. And that will look like they'll bring the lights up. They have it's shorter. At the beginning, they'll show you what instruments and sounds will be happening beforehand. Because a lot of these kids, it's too much, not knowing what's about to happen. It's a little bit, it's a struggle for them. They'll do glow sticks before a big noise so that everyone's aware that something's going to happen, to kind of brace yourselves. And it's been a great opportunity for us. Reese can be there and be himself. He can be loud. We don't have to worry about him bugging other people, and other people feel, welcome to come and be there. Gosh, I'm quickly running out of things to talk about, but one thing I will talk about is Reese's sister, Emmy. She was 1 when he got the diagnosis. So she's basically known him with the diagnosis of autism her whole life. And she has become such a caretaker for him. She advocates for him all the time. She engages with him. She just knows how to get into his world and be there with him. And that's shown Brent and I a lot about how we can also engage with him. She just is very intuitive for his feelings and what he enjoys. So that's been a real blessing to watch as they grow up. And it's very heartwarming. And if more people could be like Emmy, that would be just terrific. Yeah, gosh, I don't know what else to say. I know this is kind of a quick one, but if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Go ahead.
I was just curious how he did with school work.
Gosh, that has been, you would think, so a lot of things come naturally to children, and they don't come naturally to Reese or even other kiddos on the spectrum either. It had to be a thing where, I guess this is one I didn't talk about, was his main therapy is called ABA therapy. It's applied behavioral analysis. And so what that entails is they will provide a, we'll come up with a task or something we want Reese to learn how to do. We'll break it into very small steps. And once he's successful, usually it's a tangible reward at first. So doing a worksheet, a lot of it was like even hand over hand, like the aide had to be with him on a pencil, doing the work, and then rewarding him with like an M&M or something small. He's very food driven. So that really works. And then kind of phasing that back a bit where they're not doing hand over hand, but they do have to verbally remind him like, oh, let's keep our eye on our work. Let's just do this first one here. And then even that, once he gets more successful with that, they back off on the verbal cueing. Sometimes they'll do visual cueing where they'll have like a little checklist on his desk. Like first we do this worksheet and then we get a reward and then we're gonna do something with math manipulatives and then we'll go outside, just so he kind of has an idea of like, this isn't going to be forever, because sometimes that's his first assumption is, oh great, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. So telling him like there's an end point here and you can know when that end point is, that has helped him. It did take a really long time to get him to doing worksheets alone. I would say probably a year or two of hard work. He does do it now, and even sometimes he won't if he's in a mood or if there's some sensory thing that has been bugging him all day. But I would say mostly he does pretty good now with doing worksheets. It's just so hard to do the things that are just so easy for other kids, or even just something that you might have an innate knowledge to do. You have to teach him. He doesn't just have that.
Gary?
Good morning, Courtney. Gary Hughes. Courtney, I have a grandson who will turn 7 next month. And he was born and raised up till 5 years old in Butte. And I won't be kind to Butte. Their services are almost zero, for his experience anyway. But how was Reese, when he started speaking any words at all? Were they normal words, or were they just kind of his own little language?
At first we had to kind of provide him, we started simple. We got to start at the very basic. Yes or no. It's usually one choice or the other. Like even at lunch, you'd say, well, you'd have like a food he likes and a food he hates. And you'd be like, for lunch, do you want Cheetos or do you want broccoli? Because Reese will oftentimes defer to whatever the last choice is. So you got to make that one the undesirable one. So then, he says broccoli. Oh, well, here you go. Well, he hates that. So he learns like, okay, well, I can't just always say the last word. So that's where we started with that. But I would say most of the time now, I don't know, I want to find a way to market his skill when he gets to be older, but he can memorize movies from beginning to end. And he will just all day long just script them. A few of his favorite hits are, Minions. He loves Sesame Street. He really loves like the preschool shows, Blue's Clues. He's all about all those. So a lot of the times you'll just hear him, like he'll just script all day long, but they're not really novel language. It's mostly just things that he's memorized in his head. And sometimes it works. We've learned to use that skill of memorizing. So we've taught him certain scripts to use in just small talk, like, how are you? And he'll say, I'm fine. He doesn't really elaborate, but we've been able to use things that he's memorized so that he can use them in situations that are appropriate for that type of language. So, I mean, and I will say with care, it is hard. I'm sure Butte's way behind the ball. We've had our struggles, and before they made a mandate, insurance would deny everything. So it was hard to get services to begin with.
Well, this Asher is our grandson. If you didn't know he was borderline autism, which was just diagnosed like a year ago, it took
wow.
4 years to come up with something, you'd never know he was borderline autistic. And he has a little sister, and kind of like you're going through, she'll be 2 this year. Similar. It's just that his language, we feel bad for him because he'll say something to us, but we have no idea what he's talking about, so he has to show us and so forth. So he does get frustrated. But he's at Hawthorne.
Oh yeah, I student taught there.
Yeah. Incredible program. They've embraced him. The kids have embraced him. But it's still frustrating when you have 12 grandchildren in the top spectrum. But his mind is amazing. So I missed the first part of your lecture, so I'm looking forward to Jim Harming posting that.
Yeah, and if he hasn't already gotten connected with a speech therapist, that could help.
He's starting to do that now, and they're starting to teach him to read.
I can see them. I can't hear them.
His favorite thing is Google, because he can go to Google and say, play, what is it, a shark song, and he knows dozens and dozens of songs. So his memory is and it's daily. I don't know that he's memorizing. I suspect he is, like we all do. But yet he'll come into my home office and he'll see the numbers on. I have a metal calendar. He knows April. Now he's into May. So that's, we just teach. As a grandfather, we're teaching him constantly. So I don't know if that's something we should be doing, but.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like my family, without them, I don't know that Brent and I could have done it alone. It really takes an entire village. Even sometimes we just need a break. It's just a lot of work. So for my family, my parents and his parents, to take even all the kids, just take them away for a little bit. It's been so helpful. And Reese has an incredible bond with my dad. I think he likes him better than me. And he likes my mom better than me a little bit, only because she gives him chocolate milk all the time. But like it's an incredible bond that you get to form with him that no one else will have. And I think it's incredibly important to be present even for your children, so that they can get a little break too.
Okay, thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, May, you had your hand up?
I have a couple of questions, Courtney.
Okay.
One of them, I know that you did some unique therapies, the horse therapy, the equine therapy.
Yes.
On a bit of it. And also a second question, Brent had shared a breakthrough that he and Reese had in the dentist's office. So I wonder if you could give us some pointers about if we're in a situation where there's that kind of a breakthrough or something happening, what's the best way to support you both in that kind of a situation?
So the first part, I didn't go over I've tried a lot of things. My idea was just try everything. You never know what's going to stick. So I've done a lot of out there things with Reese. It's called hippotherapy with the horse. That one wasn't weird, but it was really great. That one was covered by Medicaid. I would haul my 2 kids in the car. We'd drive to Florence with a little potty, because I was potty training. It was an interesting thing. We met with, I don't remember what she was. She wasn't necessarily a nurse, but she was like a naturopath. We did like a little Skype session with her. She lived in California. And her recommendation was to try powdered dog's milk, which we actually tried. Didn't work, but you know, you never know if you don't try. We've done what's called neurofeedback therapy. Dr. Valin in town does it. He gets great results with kids with like ADHD. I feel like migraines it treats, autism, and they hook up a bunch of things to your, like those little sensors to your brain, and somehow your brain plays this video game on the screen where you make things move or do things. It was interesting. Again, like, I don't know that it worked. We did try it for a little while. Brent was super skeptical, and I think I saw things that I wanted to see that didn't actually happen. So, I mean, for people who have children with autism, don't be afraid to try things. In regards to the story with Reese, really quickly, he's got this script called, he says, "Mike hurt his knee." Like somewhere, we didn't know where it came from. He just kept saying, "Mike hurt his knee," and then he'd like laugh. He'd think it's so funny. And Brent and Reese were at the dentist's office. It's a children's dentist, and they were playing like a Nick Jr. show. I can't remember what it's called. And it was on, it played. We didn't know where this came from for years. Reese has been saying this, and it just came on. And my husband was so excited. He and Reese were jumping up and like, "Oh my gosh, Reese, make Mike hurt his knee." And it was a huge moment because it was a shared experience that we don't get too often. Sometimes we get these little pockets of Reese where he has a moment of clarity, and just like you're in the same space at the same time. It's super rare, which makes us cherish it even more. So for us to be able to tell people that, it means a lot when people are excited with us, and just, you know, like, "Yeah, we love that," you know, that encourages us, because this is such a huge fight, and to have these small little victories come at us, it's just incredible, and it makes it all worth it, because it's been, gosh, 14 years we've been doing this with autism. So it's few and far between. So when they happen, you know, celebrate with us and cheer us on and encourage us when we're having a hard moment. There's been moments where I posted online like, "I don't think I'm doing this right. I don't know what I'm doing." And, you know, our friends will come on, "No, you're doing great. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You know, you'll get through it." And just having that encouragement is very, very great.
Jack?
Thanks. Gal, when I started in my life work of working with people with disabilities almost 50 years ago now, there was no such thing as autism. There was, but there was no diagnosis. And I remember, Gal, it's been some time ago that I even first heard the term. And then it just became this real broad range of, and people would throw people in it, just autistic. And the spectrum is so wide and broad, up and down, you know, and so it's really changed a lot over the years, more recently. But I had a couple of questions. You know, I was involved with Opportunity Resources for almost 30 years. I ran it, and I met you in Hawaii and Reese there with Brett several years ago. And I have a connection with Brett with football, but we, the adult world, how old is Reese now?
He's 16.
Has he linked up with the adult system at all? Does he have a case manager with the DD?
DD. I don't know that he does with DD, but when we started him at Big Sky over the summer, they had me filling out a bunch of paperwork. And one of the things we did was get on the waiting list for Voc Rehab. And I did an intake interview in November, and in January, they told me he's been taken off the waiting list, and now he has qualified for those services. Which I'm told is very rare, because usually they get on freshman year of high school but they usually don't even make it off the waiting list until their senior year. And by then, they only have a few months to use it.
Right.
So now Reese is going to get 4 years of job training, job assistance. They'll get him a job, and they'll be going with him if he needs it. They're providing all sorts of assistance so he can be gainfully employed.
Right.
But I don't know that he has a case manager with DD.
Yeah, and I think the difference between voc rehab and developmental disabilities program, DD, is that DD is more of a lifelong kind of a support system versus voc rehab is usually shorter term. And I would suggest you explore the DD side of it too. And voc rehab should tell you that.
Right.
But the job training, job placement would be done by people like Opportunity Resources, or there's other providers that go out and find jobs. Voc rehab counselors don't do that.
Right.
They pay for it. And it's a support system. There's a lot of things in the adult world that I think that, and he's eligible at 16 to be able to apply for and get a case manager with DD too. So, and it's quite often.
Is there a waiting list for that one?
Huh?
Is there a waiting list for that one? Because I am on a waiting list for something. I think it might be that.
You shouldn't be on a waiting list for a case manager with DD.
Okay.
You could be, there's waiting lists all over the place, but DD,
right.
you're just, case management is not a waiting list. There's a waiting list for Opportunity Resources, for instance, or support services like that. But I would suggest, and maybe we can talk more at another time, we can, I'll make contact somehow and head you in some directions I think that might be appropriate. But I think like adult services opportunity, there's the work end of it is one thing, jobs and things like that. But a large program they have is called supported living, which is can be anything from very, very intensive support systems in the community to just real minor kind of supports, living on your own in your own apartment with roommates, all kinds of things. So it's really changed a lot over the last couple decades, and which has been good. But yeah, it's very difficult. I hear you and say, and in that frustration from a parent standpoint of understanding, and a lot of people have a lot of answers, and I applaud you for your stick-to-itiveness. It isn't going to go away, so I'm glad you did that. But
it's gotten way better though.
yeah. Anyway.
Well, thank you for that. I'll definitely look into the disability services. I know that another piece of my puzzle is I need to work on guardianship, but I can't do that until right before he turns 18. But it's on my to-do list.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Lee?
Once they turn 18 and phase more into the adult world, and what kind of jobs are they potentially capable of performing for society?
It varies on the individual, and that's what we're going to be exploring with voc rehab. And yes, like ORI, or Opportunity Resources, we have gone with a group called JOBS. It's an acronym of, I can't remember what, but what they'll do is they'll try out a couple of different things. I interviewed with the person at the voc rehab department and just kind of told her some of the things that he has done before. After school, he goes to a clinic called Peachtree, and they do the ABA therapy. And pre-pandemic, he was volunteering at Missoula Children's Theater, and in anticipation of he needs to figure out what he wants to do for employment when he's older. So we decided to try this out, and they would take the mountain line over to MCT just to see if he could also learn to navigate being in the city on his own, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be ready for that, to let him just be out there and not have a clue where he is. But he would take the bus over to MCT, and with the help of his aide, they would sort screws and other parts. They would fold T-shirts, just a bunch of other things. So we're kind of thinking what might look good for him for an employment would be going to a grocery store or a retailer and stocking shelves and putting things. He likes to sort things and have things, you know, together. So we could use that to his benefit and have him do a job like that, where sometimes he enjoys being with people, but not always. So this type of a job would keep him, you know, doesn't necessarily have to face the public. He can do his own little thing and be in his own little world for a span of time. So.
Just another allied question. I was a math teacher, and I remember reading in the history of math, some people who weren't, quote, normal had phenomenal mathematical abilities. What's his math ability?
He memorizes very well. So math is actually a really good one for him because it's not abstract. It's very concrete. This always adds up to that. So he's pretty good with it. We've even been recently working with taking him to the store, having him purchase a certain amount of things and knowing how to do like dollar up. So he knows how much money to give the cashier and how much change to expect back. So he does have that brain where he can usually, you know, right off the bat, he can figure out certain things. But I think for now, it really just extends to the basic math facts. I don't see him doing like geometry or algebra per se, but I would say probably the single largest issue we have with him at school is that he's kind of nonverbal. So being able to evaluate what he's learned is incredibly challenging because he doesn't necessarily, you know, respond to an answer or a question. So we can't really test whether or not he's getting certain things unless he feels like telling you. Otherwise, you're just going to have to assume he hasn't quite learned it yet.
Gary?
Courtney, Reese, does he participate in Special Olympics at all?
You know, he did one time when he was in elementary school, and I was so sad because I wasn't there. I was at a wedding in Vegas. I didn't know that was going to be the only one I would be able to see for a while, but Big Sky is very involved in Special Olympics, and we even did the fundraiser this year. We sold all the raffle tickets we could sell. It's supposed to be in Helena, but they ended up having to cancel it, unfortunately. But the teachers at Big Sky are so great. They decided that these kids worked hard and that they should have their own Special Olympics. So they actually put one together 2 weeks ago, I think we had it. So they did it at Big Sky. They had a bunch of, in the morning they did walks and dashes. So, you know, like the first one that Reese was in was a 400-meter walk. He had on noise-canceling headphones, wasn't really paying attention, but he did notice at the start of the race that one kid was kind of running, so he just took off. And he was running the whole thing by himself. He was way ahead of everyone, crossed the finish line, but they said, I think that he's disqualified because he was running and it's a walk. So I think he has some sort of athletic ability that we're yet to uncover fully. But I'm really looking forward to doing more Special Olympics as the years go on. I think it'll be really good for him.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Richard, did you have your hand up?
I just want to mention my number 3 of my 4 granddaughters. I'll call her she. When she was very young, we noticed that she was withdrawn, that she was able to concentrate ferociously. She had this doll house that she would just always move pieces around, never speak to anybody. And my wife thought that she was Asperger autistic. My position always was that she is she. And I think that's the way it's turned out. But it has been a real challenge. And her father has taken a great deal of leadership with her. She'll graduate from Big Sky this year and has a very high student, and she also has been an athlete, but she still is withdrawn. She's going to move into the university in the fall because she doesn't really know what she wants to do. So we couldn't, she had offers from a number of schools, but she didn't want to leave home, and we were quite sure that she will live at home while going to school. So in any case, I think there is a spectrum of autism, and I think she is probably on the edges, but she is highly functional, really highly functional. So I guess my comment was that there seems to be a range of these kinds of things.
For sure. That would always drive me crazy when people would say, oh, well, he doesn't look like he's autistic, or he doesn't act like he's autistic. And one of my favorite sayings is, if you've met one kid with autism, you've only met one kid with autism. None of them are the same. They're all different in their own unique ways. So yeah, I mean, she very well could be somewhere on the spectrum. And some kiddos can really thrive despite the diagnosis, or they've found a way to cope with whatever sensory issues are holding them back. It's really strange how diverse it is. Makes it tricky.
Jim Harmon?
I just thought I'd ask what I guess is a very logical question for the town of Missoula. Missoula has services for everything, and yet it sounds like you had to reinvent the wheel.
I did at the time, only because, well, there were services out there, but they weren't getting the word out that, hey, we've got stuff over here for you. And it really could have started with the pediatrician. He, at the time, should have at least said, I don't know, but let me find out. He would have been in a better position to, have information, have access to all of these things. But luckily, we just kind of thought through it logically, like, well, if he's going to go to school, aren't they going to need to know this stuff? So maybe they know where to start. So there definitely back then wasn't as much as there is today. There's so much out there. And also, I think having more awareness has also helped, because there are at least, I can think of 4 different clinics who provide ABA now. But when we started out, I think there was 2. So it has really increased, but the awareness itself has also increased, which has made it easier for other families to get the help that they needed.
And you mentioned repeatedly the financial challenge too of this. Is this something that is now part of insurance coverages, or?
It is. It would be early 2010s. It's called Brandon's Law. It's a mandate that Montana has that requires insurance to cover autism therapy. The state definitely has a long way to go for legislating, because there are a ton of kiddos who are on Medicaid that don't necessarily get those services because there's only a certain number of spots available. The other issue I see that the state should address is they have a set amount that providers can charge for this. So that amount is not quite enough where it needs to be. So what happens is we get some really awesome aides. We call them behavioral technicians, BTs. We get some great BTs in, and they work with Reese really good, but they're really only doing this job until they can get a better paying job. So what we see is a lot of turnover, constantly seeing a new face. And so Reese has to learn a new relationship, and this person who's coming in doesn't know Reese, so they have to relearn. It's almost like they're reinventing the wheel every single time, which, I mean, I guess silver lining, it's taught Reese to be more flexible. I think he's gotten better at reading people because he has to do it all the time. So yeah, I think that there needs to be a bit more legislation on this, because there's a lot of other families who weren't as lucky as we were.
Brenda?
Hey, Courtney.
Hi, Brenda. You delivered Reese. You helped.
Oh, I know. Hey, I wrote you a message and I can't figure out how to send it. So the bottom line is thank you. Doug and I have been down a similar road. Aaron is now 33 and I'm still shaking my head as to what to do. I mean, I think the upside is that, you know, he graduated from college, he's working. The downside is there is something. I know he is on a spectrum. I know he is. And I have tried everything. And the thing about autism is that they can be so smart that when you plug them into a therapist or whatever, they make you look like the fool, because, you know, he can articulate and and we tried family counseling and I would just sit there and I would go, nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. So anyway, I don't know how to send this stupid message, but I sent you my phone number. I would love to connect, and it is so good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I haven't seen you in forever.
I know.
Brenda, I will send you Courtney's email address.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. May, I think you had your hand up.
I did. I was wondering if there's any way, maybe the number of people that attend the special events at MCT or something, to give us some idea of what's the size of the autistic spectrum community in Missoula. How many families are working through this like you are?
That would be really interesting to know. I don't know. I mean, when we do the performances, it's more than autistic individuals. There's people who have Down syndrome or, you know, palsies of some sort. Like, there's quite a few. So I don't know that there's any sort of quantification on the numbers in Missoula.
And I might add to that too, that, yeah, there's so many people that have a dual diagnosis of even some mental health kind of issues along with it too. So it's really hard to get a handle on just autism as a number and right. What that would be, because there's so many other factors that may affect it also.
I was trying to do research. We had just done a raffle for autism awareness with another real estate agent in our office. We just did the drawing last week, and I was preparing for a video that I did for it. There was, gosh, and I don't remember the number now, but there was a website that showed incidents or whatever numbers by the state. But I know that they were like a few years old, so they're not really keeping tabs on that number. But I do know, like, when we got Reese's diagnosis, the national number was like 1 in 110, and now it's like 1 in 68. I think the main explanation for that is just that there's more awareness, so there's more spotting it and getting it diagnosed instead of just saying, well, that person's just, you know, off. So they're actually being more specific with getting a diagnosis. So that caused the numbers to go way up.
Glenn, you've got to unmute, Glenn. There you go.
Courtney, I'm like Clark. Autism was kind of a foreign language when I was in the education business in the elementary schools. I often wonder how many youngsters we dealt with, probably not the right way, that was dealing with autism. The only incident I recall is a teacher, one of my teachers back in the 60s, 70s probably, had a little guy that she had a hard time dealing with, but every morning she had him run around the whole playground area 2 or 3 times before he came into the classroom, so she could deal with him. But anyway, my question is, I wondered what is the sleep patterns of youngsters like this, like Reese, partly where you might get more relief than you possibly need, but if you might discuss that a little bit.
That's a really good question. I forgot to touch on that. Yeah, a person with autism, their brain is going constantly. It does not shut off. We struggled for quite a few years where our bedtime routine consisted of us putting him to bed at 8 and like telling him every 10 minutes to be quiet and go to sleep. And that did not work. We eventually came up with the idea, probably from my family member, of melatonin. And I don't know if it's a scientific thing or not, but I feel like I heard somewhere that people with autism, their body doesn't necessarily make enough melatonin in their bodies to naturally fall asleep. So he takes that every night. As he's gotten older and bigger, we've had to increase his dosage because his body will metabolize it faster. So that has really helped with that. And there's even a special type where I've gotten where it's a timed release. You learn a lot about these sorts of things. Like sometimes there's doses of melatonin that just gives it out really quick and puts them to sleep, but it doesn't stay in their system all night. So it wears off and they wake up in the middle of the night. So we've had to get one that's a slow release overnight, like all night long. Even with that, he goes through phases where he'll be up probably 3 or 4 in the morning or 6 in the morning, just for no reason, for weeks on end. And he's gotten to the point now where he can stay in his room. He knows not to disturb other people. His room's right underneath ours, so we can kind of hear him when he's up and singing to himself. We've also had to remove his iPad, which is his best friend. We had to take his iPad away at bedtime. We say, we're taking this upstairs. We'll give it to you after 7:30 in the morning. Setting expectations is also very big for him. So that has helped. But like I said, sometimes he'll be up for no reason at 6 in the morning. It doesn't seem to affect him in the way of like learning. Some days he'll be tired, but for the most part, it doesn't change how he views his day or how he goes about it. But it was a big struggle, and I'm sure it is for a lot of families with autism.
Speaking of melatonin, though, my daughter, who thinks she's a doctor, says that it can have the opposite effect, and it does with me. I can't take something with melatonin.
Right.
It's like drinking coffee every night before I go to bed. So
yeah, well, that's such a strange thing too. I have a friend whose son has Asperger's, and coffee has a reverse effect on him. Mm-hmm. So if she gives him coffee, it kind of mellows him out for some reason. It's just weird, the chemistry that happens in their bodies. And I think I've heard too with melatonin, if your body already produces it, then it's not helpful at all. So I don't usually give it to my daughters unless they're like 11 o'clock at night and they're still in bed. I'll sometimes let them have it, but I try not to do it more than 1 day at a time, like not 2 days in a row.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Oh, of course. I love to spread awareness.
Courtney, thank you very much for sharing your story. And I hope some of our members gave you some helpful tips on the way. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Next week, our speaker is Terry Weidner, who was supposed to be with us about a month ago, but now he's actually for sure programmed. He's going to be talking about China under President Xi, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we'll look forward to that next week. In the meantime, you all have a great week, and we'll be seeing you on Zoom next week.